Hey, welcome back to the Ping Pong Flick Show. My name is Chris Wong. Let's start off with some DCEU updates. First of all, is that Joker, the Joaquin Phoenix Joker, has finished filming. So that is very cool because that means we might actually be getting maybe a teaser this year or next year sometime, early next year. Maybe, who knows if they have all the things ready. They did put out a teaser actually, but it wasn't for the actual film. It was just Joaquin Phoenix's reveal as Joker. So I'm ready to see what this movie is all about. I'm still scratching my head all about this movie. What is it? Does it fit? Does it not fit? And I mean, they said it's just its own thing, a standalone thing, but I'm still very curious about this whole Black Label portion of the DC films in general. So hoping to see that. Next up is Birds of Prey. Margot Robbie was on Jimmy Fallon, and she talked about explaining about that long title name. Remember the long time Birds of Prey and then Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. She said this. She said it's not a very serious movie, so we thought the title should reflect that, and that is fine. I think that's fine. I kind of comes into mind about maybe it really is Harley Quinn talking and explaining this story. Maybe she's in prison, or maybe she's somewhere explaining how she got there, or things like that. I'm having that weird vibe. She's narrating this story as because of how Harley Quinn, that her character is bestowed upon this story, and she's making, maybe it's not even entirely true. That'd be quite interesting for quite some fun stuff. And even though it's rated R, doesn't mean it can't be that type of movie. Look at Deadpool 1, Deadpool 2 were both rated R movies, and they were there's a lot of comedic moments. It's a not very serious movie, but it still has that rated R vibes. I'm fine with that. It fits in with Harley Quinn's character, and that long subtitle just gave it away for me that it might possibly be her narrating this whole story. So that's about it for the DC updates. Now let's get into a little bit of Aquaman. Something really, really cool happened today. But before we get into that, Aquaman press junkets everywhere. His Aquaman, Jason Momoa himself is getting interviewed everywhere. And one of the greatest things he could possibly do is that any chance he gets, he praises Zack Snyder. He talks about how Zack Snyder chose him to be Aquaman. We've talked about that. And he talks about how great his characters is thanks to Zack Snyder. He puts it out and every chance he gets, and that's really awesome that he supports Zack Snyder in that way. I am so cool with that. I love it when Zack Snyder just doesn't get praised enough, and I'm glad he's the one doing it, especially when his movies, James Wan's movies coming out. But the other cool thing is this: there was a WSVN interview. Is that what WSVN? I think it was. And the interviewer's name was Chris Van Villiers. I totally butchered that name. But he asked Jason Momoa, Arthur Curry, Chris, this was his question: where exactly or when exactly does this take place in the DC universe? Where Jason Momoa replies, I think I'm coming straight from Justice League. Kristen asks, are we talking day after, week after? Jason says, yeah, because in Zack's cut, and you notice a long pause, and he kind of just looked up a little bit, kind of had an irritated look or some kind of pause look. We had it where I was with Volko and Mara, and I say, I have to go home. And they say, there's some force coming and I need to help. And I'm like, I'm going home to see my dad. And I get in the back of a pickup truck and pound a bottle of something. And off he goes to Wonder, So there was kind of like the end of Justice League where I was going, and then you cut to me coming home and running into a submarine and bango, I'm coming straight back from where the Justice League experience ends. Whoa! So one, he name drops Zack's cut, and then we've heard Ray Fisher go on camera and actually do this. So this is finally something really big and official, that he actually says Zack's cut, meaning the Snyder cut. And for people who keep saying it doesn't exist, this is another nail in that coffin, per se. And we've heard it so many times from Jay Oliva, Ray Fisher, all these people, Ciarán Hinds, and things like that. In fact, it's getting some quite steam on this today, that even some of those like Sonny Bunch got into it and everything like that. And it's so cool to hear Jason Momoa go on camera and actually saying Zack's cut. So one, it really does put that nail in the coffin. The Snyder cut doesn't exist. It does exist. It's real. The other thing is how this thing, how the ending goes. So if the ending for Aquaman is him with Vocal and Mera, that explains this shot here where he's in the back of the pickup truck. One of those AT&T commercials also had that as well, and so that explains how that movie ends. So I'm thinking, if that movie ends like that, in the Snyder cut, and the movie of Aquaman begins from that, that means James Wan's film has been untouched, meaning Warner Brothers didn't bother taking that little bit part out. So they didn't bother going from him going in the water and then doing something. I mean, I could be wrong. We could be wrong. We haven't seen it yet. At least I haven't seen it yet. And it could be possible that it does start with him in a submarine, but according to Jason Momoa in this interview, it continues off from Zack's cut of that pounding on the bottle and stuff like that. So it's coming home and running to his submarine. So it could be where he jumps and goes through the water, sees the submarine, and that's where it cuts off from. And so that's fine as well. But here's the thing that's really interesting, is that means that if and when the Snyder Cut does get released, it won't affect the continuity of Aquaman. You know how we were all thinking, well, most of us, a lot of us, were thinking of us that it would have to be like some alternate story. They would have to do something with Flash or something in order to explain why this Justice League cut exists. If this is true, and I think it is, then that means that the Snyder Cut is basically would be canon. It fits in the continuity without having to hurt future movies, right? At least Aquaman right now. And so that would actually work in favor of the Snyder Cut. So if the audience is going to watch Aquaman and they see a drunken Arthur Curry who wants to be alone but he doesn't want to help and things like that, then that means, and they're like okay with that. They're like, I accept that as the character. Then seeing that character in the Snyder Cut wouldn't be so bad. They're like, oh yeah, that totally connected to Aquaman, because we know in Aquaman he totally picks up the trident and he wears the golden thing, and he's okay. He's Aquaman. So I could totally see that being connected, and it actually fits. Now, the other thing is that also says that the final Snyder Cut, the one that was going to release before Zack Snyder left, is probably the one that he's going to choose and confirm, is the one where all the heroes end going their separate ways. The whole 5-part story arc is gone. I mean, that probably didn't even work it in since Batman v Superman or even before. So that part, sadly, I would have loved to see that, but sadly that's gone. So now we had this Justice League Snyder Cut where he had to work it until where it was, until he finally left. But that one is all Snyder. Aquaman getting in the back of a truck leaving. Batman looking up at his Batwing. Superman ripping open his shirt. And it's just we're just not sure where Cyborg ended up, where the actual Cyborg scene ended up, where the actual Flash scene ended up. Those and Wonder Woman, where did that end up? So those three are still a mystery. Like, I'm thinking the Flash final scene may be, and this is just my own opinion, could be him saving Iris scene so that it leads into his Flash movie. And that's what Zack Snyder was doing. He had it open-ended for each character to go their separate ways so they can each have their own solo film. And that's exactly what he did with the Aquaman character. And so that fits. So if the Snyder Cut does come out and it comes out and it ends that way, it won't be so bad because it connects with the future solo movies. Now, we're not sure about Flash and Cyborg and Batman and all that, or even Wonder Woman 84, because Wonder Woman 84 is going to take place in 1984, so we don't know where she does after Justice League. So this Aquaman movie is very telling, and possibly wondering when Shazam takes place. I mean, Shazam could take place after Man of Steel, but this Aquaman movie will take place after the Snyder Cut JL, and that is great. That is great. That's if we actually do see him drinking a bottle in the back of the truck and not just straight to the submarine scene, I'm thinking. So if it goes straight to the submarine scene, then that still could fit with Whedon's Justice League, unfortunately, because you do see him going into the water all the way, underwater. So that's going to be interesting how this turns out. But I'm very much looking forward to Aquaman and seeing how any of that connects, other than of course, the Quindent, things like that. So I'm really wondering and hoping to see a lot more references to possibly Zack's cut. And so, like I said, there it is. Best part, James Wan's Aquaman is untouched by Warner Brothers. The ending of Zack's cut actually would connect to Aquaman, and if Snyder Cut ever does get released, it won't affect the continuity at all. The one that at least the Snyder Cut that he had almost pretty much completed before he left Warner Brothers. Now, a little bit of tinfoil, and this is actually coming from Big Mouth and Movies TV Man. I kind of tweeted this out. He said he has a source, and so you put your tinfoil hat on, if you please. This is all tinfoil territory now. Any people who want any sliver of logic, please leave now. But tinfoil area. Big Mouth, Movies TV Man, says that his source believes, or says to him, that the Snyder Cut will release on the DC streaming service when the DC streaming service launches worldwide. Yeah. I'm going to link his video in the description down below. Take a look at that. Let me know what you think about that. We've been talking about for a while, even John Aaron had mentioned on DC Films Hub podcast, that the best option and probably the cheapest option would be to release the Snyder Cut on a DC streaming service. For most of all, the general mainstream audience don't watch that. They don't care if DC fans and people who are probably more in the know what's going on in DCEU would be the ones to watch that. And so that would be okay. It won't confuse the general main audience. They're not going to watch it. But if they are curious about seeing some kind of alternative cut of Justice League, they'd subscribe to DC streaming service. People who are just curious to see what that's like, they'll probably go on there. And calling it the alternative version, even though we know it's the real version, would be okay too. That wouldn't confuse people. Oh, okay, that's what another way that movie could have ended up, even though now we know it continues. Continuity is good. But We thought that would kind of be kind of cool. And I think it makes sense to make it if to make it come on when DC streaming goes worldwide. Internationally, I think people internationally kind of like Zack Snyder films a little bit more. I get that feeling from hearing a lot of people that internationally it seems to be more accepted than here in the United States. And so that makes sense that DC streaming worldwide would go in effect. And you can see that, the tinfoil hat, we're still in tinfoil hat area, by the way. So Warner Brothers UK did that teaser for Aquaman. I've talked about this, but they put in Zack Snyder's scenes of Arthur Curry in the behind at the end of that Aquaman trailer. It's almost like Warner Brothers UK loves Zack Snyder stuff more than Warner Brothers US. So I'm sure they have the same heads. Kevin Sujihara rules them all, but for whatever reason they did that. And so I don't know. That's also really interesting. It's really enticing, and I hope that really come true. There is no date right now for a worldwide release of DC streaming, so there is nothing, a date to actually look forward to. That's it. It was a big day. I mean, I was super stoked, super happy. There's a lot of controversial things going on in the fandom, a lot of different tweets, and but I think even though for people who don't want to see Aquaman, kind of shunning this right now, I think overall it's good. I mean, any little bit of movement, any little bit of social media interaction, every little bit of interaction in the media and the buzz will help the cause. It doesn't deter, even though it may not be enough. It's just one little inch closer, right? Just one little inch closer, and I am so fine with that. I am so fine with that. There are some checked mark, people on Twitter and some larger media sites, blog sites, who are tapping into it, wanting to getting interested into the Snyder's Cut, and I think that just helps it. Just every little bit helps, and I'm very glad that Jason Momoa came out and just said it, and he keeps praising Zack Snyder's. Who knows, maybe tomorrow he'll say something else, or the day after, or, the tour is not over yet, and I'm hoping for more good news, hoping for more revealing news, as we, even in our own heads, try to piece this movie together. But one thing's for certain is that I believe the latest, most final Snyder Cut version is when all the heroes go their separate ways. There's probably not going to have that Flashpoint thing happen, Steppenwolf killing all of them, or Darkseid killing all of them, one of those things. I think all that was 5-film part arc thing, and it was a little bit more simplified this time around. So, all right, guys. Well, that is it for tonight. Thank you so much for subscribing. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time.